The media today is criticized and lauded, often in the same breath. Let's hear from one of our local media publishers on his take on this volatile subject next on Lakeshore Focus.
The Indiana University Northwest School of Business and Economics is the only public institution in the region to hold AACSB International accreditation. The program provides undergraduate business education with a balanced curricula based in leadership, teamwork, and technology. IUN serves both traditional and non-traditional commuter students in a diverse urban environment. Learn more at iun.edu/business.
Welcome again to Lakeshore Focus, a weekly show highlighting the key issues, important events, and interesting people in our region. I'm Keith Kirkpatrick. Some people today think the media is uncovering corruption, telling us about crucial events, and informing us on critical issues. Others will respond with sharp criticism of misstatements of fact, missed opportunities to report important events, and extreme bias. With us today is a person who is clearly in the middle of this debate as publisher of our local Times media company. Let's meet Chris White. I've really paved the way to engage you in a conversation about the media as a whole, right?
So, yes, and I'm looking forward to it. This should be a good visit.
Well, I figured a guy who's been in different parts of the country and worked in the media for a while ought to have some take on this. Do you see that too, as my lead-in said, is that just everybody seems to have an opinion about the media, and oftentimes it's pretty critical today.
Well, absolutely, but I think a big part of it's because the media does play such an important role in our lives. There was a time when you could wake up in the morning and you could read that day's newspaper and know everything you needed to know about the world that you were in. But now we're all always on. And before you're out of bed in the morning, you probably have the local news channel on. You've probably read the headlines on your cell phone from local newspaper email editions and others. We're more informed, and we expect to be more informed than we ever have. Information plays such a crucial role.
It's kind of an overload, though, sometimes, don't you think?
I think so, and I think that's a part of our role that I hold very almost sacred, and that's not just to deliver the information, but to provide the context to use that information to sort what's important and what's just noise.
Well, that's a great criteria, and I want to get back into some of that criteria and maybe focus first on that part of the media that seems to be just sensational, seems to have its own opinion, has an agenda. I didn't grow up with that kind of media, but we seem to have a lot of that today.
Well, and for the past, looking back over my career, I've heard that for the past 20 years, that same conversation. But if you look back at the beginnings of media in this country, the 1880s, the 1890s, every town had a Democratic newspaper, a Republican newspaper, if you were lucky, also an independent, or a Whig Party newspaper, if you go way back. There's this perception that media bias is something new. And it's not. People seem to seek out information that confirms their beliefs and prefer media for it. Look at the three major news networks, CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News. We can each put each of those segments or stations into a segment along the political spectrum.
More like the newspapers used to be, you're saying?
Like the newspapers used to be. And it becomes a competition for ideas. Now, the danger of that, and it's something that I fight against and warn against, is that if all you receive is information that agrees with your view of the world, you don't grow. It just continually reaffirms biases. And frankly, I think a lot of the problems that we're seeing in society, in particular in politics, are because all you receive is confirming information.
Well, back when I was in college, I was a political science major, so I didn't take the journalism classes, but took the classes on propaganda and public relations and some of those kind of things. And, even in that time, we were told that, we should be trying to provide fair and objective information to people. I mean, that looked like that was being drilled into people in journalism. Have we given up on that?
No, 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 I don't think we have it, but I do think that when you talk about the media, you're casting a broad net. I think most media outlets today, and I can certainly speak for most newspapers, are striving to present both sides, but to really move down the middle. We have, over the past year, we've made a very conscious effort to expand the views on our opinion page, to make sure that we are covering the full spectrum, but also providing the bias, not the bias, a map to navigate through those opinions.
I read some of those, and you're right, because I look at some of the people and I go, wow, those are some serious extremes on these issues. And then there's some people in the middle about those. So you are doing a good job of that, of the editorial sections.
You know, a well-informed citizenry should be able to look at two opposing views and make up their own mind, to form their own path. And I think as a people, we're much more willing to do that than politicians give us credit for.
Do you think, I would hope we are too, Chris, but you know, sometimes I feel like people look for the articles like, I agree with this one, so I'm going to read this one, and see, here it is, it's in print, just same as my opinion. And I'm not even going to read this other one because this guy's an idiot.
Exactly, and it just validates. You know, I love watching Fox News and then switching over to one of the comedy stations or the comedy network or even MSNBC and just getting the counterpoint, because somewhere in the middle is probably the truth. And I think more people are willing to do that than we give credit for. I know that as we work to do that and really to take a more moderate stance locally, we've had positive feedback from our readers. We get complaints from the fringes, but I think most people want unbiased information. They want the ability to form their own opinions and then to test those opinions as they move forward.
I think one of the things we need to do as leaders in our communities, and anybody, encourage that kind of thought, because we seem to be far from it sometimes. But let's talk a little bit about your whole industry besides that piece of it. Two things that you continue to hear about the media is it's constantly in change for the past probably 20 years. And the second is that everybody in media is struggling to make any money, particularly in the newspaper business, or maybe it's just the newspaper business. It sounds like, wow, that's a tough business to be in.
You know what? It's all a tough business because the world that we took for granted for so long. In most markets, there was one newspaper or two newspapers, and they competed with other newspapers. There are TV stations, and they compete with other TV stations. Radio, and it goes on. But at the end of the day, when we had this internet, this digital revolution, particularly with the mobile revolution, it doesn't really matter what our legacy platform is. We have as many people, actually I would say more people reading us online now than we do in print, and that's fine. TV stations are going that way, and I think as changes continue to happen, as people are cutting their cable cords, we're going to see the internet more as a means of delivering entertainment and news broadcast. I could see a day where they'll be saying the same thing, that their mobile audience is bigger than their set-top audience.
I think you're right. I think we forget, and I was raised in that generation, so I remember back when there was, a couple newspapers, there was 3 major networks, and then there was this other maybe odd station that was kind of coming in to the market, and there was like several radio stations, and it was pretty clear you listened to the big super stations out of St. Louis or Chicago, and there was half a dozen magazines that were kind of like everybody read those. If you went to anybody's house, they had a Look magazine or a Life or a Newsweek or something, but those were the magazines that everybody had. But now, oh my gosh, the choices are incredible. What do they say? How many, several hundred stations on TV now to watch?
It's just the number of news stations on TV to watch, and that number just keeps growing and growing. We all want choices, but then we become overwhelmed by the choices, and then we criticize what we're getting from the choices that we have.
That's right, because one of the common things is 300 TV stations and nothing to watch.
Exactly.
Right?
Well, and at the same point, if you walk into the local supermarket and you see 300 varieties of apples and you have to make a decision and there are no red delicious apples, what do you choose? You've got to think about each of these specialty. More often than not, in tests, when that's been thrown out, what happens? People buy oranges because there are too many decisions. And I think as we hear about the increasing bias, what we're really hearing is there are too many choices. I miss the days of watching Dan Rather on TV or Peter Jennings on TV, and those were my two. And I could choose based on the way that he looked, because the content coming in was going to be very similar.
See, and I was in the Walter Cronkite
And-
era, so which was awesome because he was like the godfather of television news. It seemed like. So the Times Media Company has definitely shifted, and so when you say when we say Times Media now, we don't say the paper automatically. What do you kind of consider your product lines, or?
It's you know, the Times. The print edition is still our primary product. That said, our larger audience comes from NWI.com. On a typical week, we'll have 60,000 people visit our mobile site, or at least that's been the trend most of the year. We'll have another 50,000 people visit our desktop site on a typical weekday. I will say that that's an average over the past 12 to 13 weeks. Last week, we hit an all-time high. We had 91,000 people come to our mobile site on Wednesday. It was a good news day, but it wasn't a great news day. But we're seeing this fast adoption. So, you know, at some point, I think as people think of Times Media, they're going to think of NWI.com first.
Do you have anybody who says, I don't want the paper anymore delivered to my house, I'll just get all my news on your website and on your
We
mobile
hear that
devices?
a lot. I hear that quite a bit. And the thing I hear the second most often is, you know, we tried just being digital, but we really do miss the print edition because they're different reading experiences. In fact, our subscription model is no longer a print versus a digital. If you subscribe to our print products, you have full access to all our digital content. If you want a digital-only subscription, if you live within the region, we are still going to deliver a Sunday print edition for you. And the reason is,
All those ads.
well, honestly, yes, that's part of it. But
That's
the
the way you
other-
make money, I mean.
and that's
what do
how
you
we
wait?
support journalism.
Right.
But the other is, they're two different experiences. And I don't have my phone in my pocket. Normally, I'd whip it out, but we check these things up to 100 times a day now to see what's going on. But we're only reading a 140-character headline. Most often, that's enough.
Are most
And
of
I'm
the
gonna click-
newspapers doing the same thing?
Many are. There are different models on digital subscriptions. So some, like the Wall Street Journal, you pay before you can read almost anything on their site. Others are still wide open. We found a metered approach works, that we allow a number of free reads. And then beyond that, you either subscribe or you take Google surveys or find some other mechanism to help us monetize and be able to afford to produce the content that you're enjoying.
You know, one of the things I've always been impressed with talking to people in your business is, and you guys say it better than I probably will, but what other businesses are that every day you produce a brand new product?
And that's exactly it. But I miss those days because now we are constantly, we used to have a once-a-day deadline, and we worked really hard till 11 o'clock, and we sent the paper to bed, and we came in the next morning and started over. Now we're expected to be a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week breaking news organization. More often than not, by the time you read the Sunday paper, we've already got the morning paper. You wake up in the morning, by the time you walk down, if you've checked your phone, we've probably updated some of the stories that you're going to read in just the few hours between the time that we printed and the time that you were able to pick it up.
So does that mean
off the
you've
porch.
got people working there all the time? Because I mean, I think that is the vision of that everybody works, they get the paper done, they all go home, except for probably the people who got to print it and deliver it.
But we do now have, we're not fully staffed in the morning hours, but we do maintain resources so that we can get breaking news up as it happens.
So there's a few people still there checking everything.
They're there, they're on call, they're watching. So we never quite, not only can you read the paper anywhere on your phone, but we can report anywhere from a phone as well.
One of the other things that I've always been fascinated in your business, I mean, you got to get it right, because if not, it's in front of tens of thousands of people. So Can you talk about maybe, not one of the ones maybe here locally, but in your history where it's like, oh my gosh, we got this so wrong, and
You know what, I'd love to, but this magic thing happens when that happens and we've recovered from it and we're moving forward, it's mentally blocked. We have to focus on what we got right.
Right.
And we learn the lessons and, strive not to make those same mistakes again. But I could spend a lot of time sharing headline bust, but as far as truly getting it wrong, I've been fortunate in that I've worked with organizations where the culture was right before fast. And I can't think of an instance where we went. I'm sure there have been, but
more is probably like typos and misaligned names or those kind of things.
and some of those just get funny, but that's a whole other story.
So, in the business, is there like what would be called a fatal mistake if you were working there? If like you did this, you probably were going to get canned. Not necessarily the publisher, but a writer or an editor who allowed something. I mean, is there kind of like never let this happen, or your head is on the block? Is there such a thing, or is it just kind of like we make mistakes, so we just kind of got to roll with it sometimes?
That would it would all depend on the situation. I think if someone knowingly went with a story fast, if they were plagiarism, obviously plagiarize a story, you're out. Knowingly producing false facts or not doing the diligence to get a story correct before it goes, misrepresenting sources, misrepresenting where you got the data from. Any of those things that would call our credibility into account would be a fatal mistake.
So what was your take on the big media piece about, I'm trying to think who it was that falsified the stories in Vietnam or something? He had ridden on a helicopter, but the helicopter really didn't go down or something.
Right, Brian Williams. Brian Williams'
right.
Helicopter was shot down over Iraq, but it wasn't. And
how did you look at that as a media person? I mean, what was the discussion among your peers about that? Mistake or like really stupid?
There are times I don't quite remember what happened a couple years ago, but I don't think I would ever be able to remember being shot down in a helicopter that I wasn't shot down in.
Right.
It seemed to be, that was a step too far. And NBC has made a decision, I think, that he's back and doing some work with MSNBC, but I don't see how he would be able to be taken seriously as a journalist going forward.
But you're right. We relive history, and particularly repetitive history. You do it enough, it's like, I think I was there. Like you know the story so well, or I'm trying to remember if I was there, or somebody just told me that. That can get confusing at some point for a reporter, or for an editor even.
But I'm pretty sure if I were shot down in a helicopter or not,
you would remember that.
Yeah, there's embellishment and maybe even some license, but I think that was a step too far.
Yeah. Where do you see your industry going? If there was something you could predict and say, I bet in 10 years what we're going to see is this.
Well, what I see is we're going to be broadening our business base. As our subscription models change, as our advertising, you can look at what's going on. Most of our large advertising clients, the big box stores, are under siege. They're fighting their same digital battles that everyone else is. When Best Buy is seen as an Amazon showroom, we have to wonder about the future of those Sunday insert streams. How are we going to be able to afford to do the journalism that we're doing? So we're always going to be looking at new ways, new business models that will help support our traditional work. We're going to constantly be looking at better ways to deliver more content to more people. The running joke is we don't know what the big thing is that we're going to be talking about this time a year ago. And the reason we don't know is it probably hasn't been invented yet. And we've seen that tech curve begin to flatten out and slow down a bit, but we're still a very innovative country, innovative society. That next big thing, when it happens, we're going to be right there providing content on it to keep our local readers informed. So really, without regard to what the platform is, as long as we're focused on covering our region in ways that no one else can or will, we think our future is secure.
That's really a good way to look at it. It's like, I'm not sure what's going to happen, but we're going to be ready for it, or we're going to adapt to it. I like that. Is there somebody in the media that you just personally admire, historically or just even currently? Who do you admire that's in the industry?
Oh, wow, that is,
There could be several people, but just somebody off the top of your head, you just like, man, I just really admire this person.
I've worked with a number of those people over my career, and you know, I try to keep my heroes close, if that makes sense. But when I look at those visionary leaders who, despite the turmoil, the troubles that this industry's gone through over the past 10 years, as we're transitioning through to the other side, the people who stay true to the mission, and you know, I'm trying to think of a you know. I'm just going to say it. Someone like Bob Heiss, our editor, I truly admire the work that he does, because he's unrattleable, regardless of what goes on. He knows what we need to do. He knows what our mission is, and he stays on task and on point. I admire that more than I do the say the moguls or the giants, or even the people that the reporters that we all know. It's easy to admire that reporter who's standing on a battlefield telling the story live as it happens while they're doing it, because it takes guts. But it's just as important to admire that person who's going out to work the scene of an accident at 3 a.m. in the pouring rain to get that story in for us.
So we're down to really near the end here. Just quick, if you had all the publications in the country laid out in front of you, other than the Times, what one would you pick up to read?
The first thing I would pick up is the Wall Street Journal. And the reason is I love the quick hits on the front page. I love the in-depth reporting. Frankly, I can throw away all the business news that's in it, but for a good, quick, concise, unbiased, easily read view of what's going on in the world, that's my go-to.
Okay. I really appreciate having you on the show and sharing your insights. You're not normally probably in front of a TV, you're probably always writing, so this is probably a different, but I really appreciate you having.
I think your viewers will agree I'm probably better off behind the computer than I am in front of the camera.
I think you did really well.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it. On the occasions when I find myself listening to someone complain with righteous indignation about the deplorable and overpowerful media, I'm reminded of my favorite media, movies. I imagine that I'm watching a Star Wars movie where the rebels of the Federation are talking about the horrible atrocities of the evil empire. They are talking about how the evil empire, substitute media, does whatever they want, says whatever they can, and produces whatever they wish with little or no regard for the impact it has on all of us. That was Star Wars, and it was a fictional, digitally enhanced struggle between good and evil in a magnificent popular story. We live in reality, well, at least most of us. The media is not an evil empire directed by a singular entity or even a small central group that dictates how they will dominate and control the world. The media has many forms: newspapers, magazines, radio, television, video, and more. It is delivered in a variety of ways to your front door, mailbox, computer, mobile phone, electronic device, notebook, and who knows what else. It is produced by writers, programmers, artists, photographers, editors, broadcasters, actors, and the list goes on forever. Now, tell me that all of these complex components are woven into some comprehensive plan to control and manipulate our minds. I concede that there are various industry cultures that share common practices, standards, and morals, or lack thereof. I would also note that the media follows trends that shape the product and the ways it is delivered. Yes, there are unethical, mudslinging, selfish individuals embedded in the fabric of this industry. There are also people and organizations that adhere to high standards of excellence and ethics. I am proud to be affiliated with one of them, public television and radio. Each of us has the freedom to decide what we watch, read, or listen to. So the next time you are complaining about some broadcast or article from the evil empire and its desire to mold your mind, remember, you chose it. Thanks for watching Lakeshore Focus. We would really like to hear from you with your thoughts about our show or reaction to my closing comments. Your views are important. Send an email to us at the address on your screen or check out our website, which has a list of over 90 of our past Lakeshore Focus broadcasts. Number 837 is a highly informative look at recycling in your home and office. I even get guests to taste test styrofoam. You have to watch it to get a chuckle. Check it out. Join us next week for another Lakeshore Focus. Until then, I'm Keith Kirkpatrick saying, make a positive difference in our world today.
The Indiana University Northwest School of Business and Economics is the only public institution in the region to hold AACSB International accreditation. The program provides undergraduate business education with a balanced curricula based in leadership, teamwork, and technology. IUN serves both traditional and non-traditional commuter students in a diverse urban environment. Learn more at iun.edu/business.